Hello and welcome to Mindscast 445. I'm Cindy Rader. The purpose of this tutorial is to create a simple Laravel application and to get familiar with some of the Eloquent Object Relational Mapping or ORM features. So we'll start by using the Composer Dependency Manager to create a project. The command is composer create project laravel/laravel. Notice we're doing preferred distribution. That's a little bit smaller and easier than using source. And the name of our project is going to be Books ORM. I press return, and this is going to take a few minutes. Notice this has created quite a few directories for us, and we're going to first update two files in the config directory. Then we're going to add some models. That's our ORM, Object Relational Mapping. We'll add some models. Then we will add some views. And finally, we'll update the routes. So in the app.php file within config, we have a debug prompt. We want to change that from false to true so that we get better error handling messages in case any issues arise. Now in the database.php file within that same directory, we're going to scroll down and change the default from MySQL to SQLite. Now I'm going to create two models, one to contain books and one to contain a type of book, which we'll use for sorting and searching. And I've already created those, but I'm just showing you here that they are existing in the app/models directory. So the first model we create is for book. Notice this is in the book.php file, and we must start with the PHP tag. This is the class book, which extends Eloquent. Eloquent is the ORM for Laravel. We're going to set timestamps to false because we don't care about times for created at or updated at. And then in our array, we're going to list the fields. We have a title, an author, and a book type ID, and this is going to be the foreign key that relates to our book type table. Next, we have a function here, and this is very important so that we can map from the book type ID to the actual name of the book type. And this is simply a belongs to relationship. We have basically a one-to-many relationship between books and book types. So now here we have the book type class. Again, it's in a PHP file. It extends Eloquent, and we don't care about timestamps. The interesting thing here is we have a function named books, and the idea here is we want to maybe be able to get the set of all books that have a particular type, and for that we will use the has many relationship with, here's the name of the class that we relate to, which is book. So far we've created the models, which is what we use when we want to interact with the database using the website, but we haven't actually created the tables within the database. And to get that process started, we're going to use a migration. We type PHP artisan and then the command migrate:make. That's going to make a migration file for us. And we want to give it a descriptive name, so we're going to call it add books and types tables. And this will take just a minute. So we see that this has created a migration file for us. Notice the name that we typed in, and also it prefixes it with the time stamp that it was created. So the file that was created for us automatically contains an up and a down command for both applying and reversing the migration. And within that, I've already created the schema. So here's schema create. This is our books table. Here's our book types table. Both of them have an auto increment field for the primary ID. Eloquent expects this. The books have additionally a title and an author, which are of type string. And now we've got the book type ID, which again is the foreign key that's going to relate to book types. The book types table has simply the ID and a name, and we're going to use this for things like nonfiction and fiction and any other type of book that we want to classify by. Now the down just rolls back this particular migration, and in this case, since we're creating books, we're simply going to drop books and book types. So now we need to actually execute that migration file, and again we're going to use the command line artisan. PHP artisan migrate is the command. Press return. Ask if we really want to run this command. We say yes. And there we have now created the tables within our database. Now that we've created the tables, we want to actually add some initial data. This is called seeding the table. And Laravel makes this easy. Again, within the database seeds directory, we have added a books table seeder file. And when we run it, notice we have to specify the table. We first delete, so we get rid of any data that might have been there. And then we create an array that just inserts some number of books into our table. Here I have 5 books. with different title, author, and notice I have two different book types that I'm using. Those are going to relate to the entries that I insert into the book types table, where I have one is nonfiction and two is fiction. So the database seeder file is automatically included, and to ask it to insert our books, we simply need to add this call to the books table seeder within the run method of the database seeder file. And we once again are going to use the artisan command line, this time with the command db:/seed. Yes, we want to run this command. And there it's seeded with the books table seeder. So now we're going to work on the views, which is what the users interact with. And once again, I've already created the files, but if we look at the app/views directory, we're going to have a master blade PHP. That's going to be the template that will define a consistent layout for our application. Blade is a template language used by Laravel, just makes it a little easier to write PHP code and to insert variables and such into your code. And we have a books directory, and within that we have just one file, index.blade.php. So our master template is going to be fairly simple here. We have the standard HTML tags, a title that we've included, which is just books. Here I've got a page header that's going to be included on any page that we create. For our simple application, we're really only going to have an index page. And then here's the interesting part. We've got a container. Notice the use of a yield command. What that means is that when we define a content section within our individual pages, the data and text from those content pages will get inserted into our master template. So here's our index page. Notice the top line. This is how we make the connection with the master template that we just looked at. And then here's the content section. Notice that we have an @ section and an @ stop that defines where the yield content will go. And within that, what we're going to be doing is looking at each book. And within each book, we're going to print the title and the author. And in a little bit, we're going to go ahead and print the category names. But for now, we're going to start simple and see if we can just get something to display. So we have one more step before we can bring this up and look at it in a browser, and that's to define the route so that when we type an address into the URL box at the top of the browser, it knows where to find the page and also how to get data into that page. So we have here, first off, a connection between the variable named book and the book model, which we created a few minutes ago. And now we're going to define two routes, either the slash or the URL books, either one of which we want to redirect to books/index. Notice books is the subdirectory or the folder we created within views. Index is the index.blade.php file. So either of those URLs, notice with the HTTP verb get, will take us to that particular view. And of course, that view is going to go through, it has a for each that looks at all of the books. And so we want to use the Eloquent book all to query the database and get all of those books from the table. And we're going to put those into a variable named books. And notice we're going to pass that variable into the view. So we've defined all the pieces, and now we need to bring up a web server. And once again, we're going to rely on the command line interface and PHP Artisan. If we use the serve command, that will bring up a server. Notice that it's on localhost port 8000. So let's bring up a browser, and notice the URL is localhost:8000/books. And there we have the heading that we put in and the 5 books that we loaded when we seeded the database. So in addition to title and author, we'd also like to, in our index, show what type of book each one is. And I first want to remind you what we wrote in our book.php. Remember this function book type? What that specified was that we have, using this belongs to relationship, a one-to-many relationship between books and types, and that's using this foreign key, book type ID. Notice that it's important for these names to all match up if we want Eloquent to do this linking for us automatically. So how does this work? In the index file, notice that we've got the book that we're accessing and displaying. book type is going to call that function, and it's going to do the lookup for us and return the book type. And then within that, what we want to display is the name. So fiction or nonfiction is the name that we stored in our database tables for the name of the book types. So if we return to our browser and hit refresh, notice that we now do show the book type along with the title and author. So now I want to show just a little bit more about how Eloquent works. This is not a very realistic application, but I've added some links here. One is to show all books. That's really what we're already doing. One is to select by a particular book type. In a real application, of course, you'd probably want to prompt the user to enter a book type. And another one that's going to show the way that we can do ordering or sorting within Eloquent. For these links to work, we're going to have to add some routes to our routes.php file. The first one I'll show is ordered. This is very simple, looking for books/ordered as the URL pattern. And we're just going to use the order by Eloquent command. And we're going to order it by author ascending and use the get command to actually retrieve the records. The rest of this looks the same as in just the straightforward get books, which we've already seen. Next, we're going to show looking for the book type nonfiction, or we have a second way of doing it, which is looking at books/book type/name if we wanted to make it more flexible. In either case, what we're doing is we're going to do a query on book type, and we're going to be specifying the name. Here we've hard-coded nonfiction. Here we're using the parameter that we've passed in. And we want to get just the first record, because otherwise we return a whole set of records. And what we want is to be able to get just the first record, and then what we're going to pass into our view is going to be using that book type and getting books. And to understand that, we need to again return to our book type model. And notice that we have this function books, which we created a little while ago. And this tells us that we have many book objects that relate to a particular book type. And so that's how Eloquent will make that connection for us. So we return to our browser, and we have show all books, show only nonfiction, and order by author. That concludes this tutorial. Thanks for watching.